The morning the soil tests came back from the county extension office, Meg Thorne was standing in her field with a pH meter in one hand and dirt under her fingernails that wouldn't wash out for 3 days. The number on the readout made the extension agent's voice on the phone apologetic. 8.9. Alkaline enough to kill most crops. Salt content off the charts. Ms. Thorne, I'm not sure what you were hoping for, but this land is, well, it's compromised. The previous owner's irrigation management was, I know what it is, Meg said. She was looking at the white crust that surfaced after rain, the telltale sign of salt pushing up through clay soil. Thank you for the report. She hung up. Across the fence line, she could see Dale Peterson on his tractor, prepping his fields for the standard spring wheat everyone in this part of the Nebraska panhandle had planted for 40 years. He'd see her test results eventually. They all would. 6 weeks earlier, Meg had stood in the county assessor's office while Martin Cobb tried one more time to talk her out of the purchase. Meg, listen. I know you've got your heart set on this, but Frank Delacroix ruined this land. 20 years of poor water management, salinity creeping up from the water table, the soil's shot. How much is he asking? Martin sighed. 300 an acre, which is still too much for what you're getting. It's 80 acres of problems. I'll take it. You haven't even seen the full survey. I've walked every inch of it. I'll take it. The paperwork took 2 weeks. The coffee shop took 2 days. Meg stopped in for her usual Thursday morning cup and found Dale Peterson, his son Connor, and Wade Holloway from the seed co-op clustered at the corner table. Heard you bought the Delacroix place, Dale said. Not hostile, almost gentle. That's ambitious. It's available. It's also dead, Wade said. Salt levels are through the roof. Frank tried 5 different crops before he gave up. Nothing takes. I'm not planting what Frank planted. Connor leaned back in his chair. What were you thinking? Some kind of remediation crop? That's a 10-year project minimum. Barley, Meg said, planting in 3 weeks. The silence had weight. Then Wade laughed, not mean, just surprised. Barley, on salt ground. Heritage variety, salt tolerant. Meg, Dale's voice was kind now, which was worse than mockery. I know you've been farming your family's 40 acres for 8 years now, and you do good work, but this isn't about effort. The chemistry's wrong. You're throwing money into ground that can't give it back. She paid for her coffee and left. That afternoon, her sister called from Omaha. Mom's worried, Sarah said. She heard you bought bad land. Mom heard from who? Does it matter? Is it true about the salt? Meg was in her truck heading to the seed supplier in Alliance. 300 miles round trip for specialty barley seed that cost 4 times what conventional wheat would run. It's manageable. Meg, you can't afford to lose a season. Dad's equipment loan is still on the books. You've got property taxes coming. I know my finances. Then why are you doing this? Because their father had taught her to read land the way other people read books. Because she'd walked the Delacroix field a dozen times before making the offer and seen what nobody else bothered to look for. The areas where volunteers still grew, the texture variations in the soil, the places where Frank's mismanagement had been worst and, crucially, where it hadn't quite reached. Because it'll work, Meg said. The seed arrived on a Tuesday. Black barley, an ancient landrace from the Fertile Crescent, documented salt tolerance up to 12 Siemens per meter. Meg's field tested at 11.2 in the worst spots, 8.7 in the best. Margins thin as paper, but they existed. She planted alone. Her usual help, Connor Peterson, sometimes ran equipment for her during busy seasons, was suddenly unavailable. The tractor hours stretched long and solitary. By the time she finished, her shoulders ached and her hands were cramped, but the field was in. The barley came up patchy, expected. The salt was worst in the northwest quadrant, and those plants struggled, stunted, yellowish. But the southern 60 acres sprouted thick and strong, dark green against pale soil. Dale stopped by in early May, leaned against his truck at the property line. How's it looking? Growing. Heard you went with some specialty variety, that expensive. Some, he shook his head. You're stubborn, Meg, like your dad. He'd have tried this too, probably. He did try it, different field, different crop. It worked. That was different circumstances. It was the same principle. Match the crop to the ground you've got, not the ground you wish you had. Dale didn't argue, just drove away with that look men got when they decided to wait for failure to teach the lesson they couldn't. The county extension agent, A young guy named Tim Bradshaw, fresh from university, came out in June to document the experimental planting for some database he was maintaining. "Interesting choice," he said, walking the rows. "The literature suggests barley can handle moderate salinity, but at your levels," he paused. "Well, it'll be educational either way." Educational. Like she was a science project that might provide useful data when it failed. But the barley kept growing. The heat came early in mid-June, temperatures pushing into the mid-90s with wind that felt like it had come straight off a griddle. Meg walked her field every morning, watching the barley heads form, checking soil moisture, adjusting irrigation timing to keep salt from concentrating in the root zone. The conventional wheat across the fence line at Dale's farm looked good. Strong stand, even growth. 2 miles east, Wade Holloway's fields were the same. The whole region was gearing up for a solid harvest, normal yields, normal prices, the reliable rhythm of industrial agriculture doing what it did. Meg's field looked strange by comparison. The barley grew in irregular patterns, thriving where salt levels were manageable, struggling where they spiked. But the thriving areas were genuinely thriving plants, thick-stalked and heavy-headed, a darker green than the surrounding wheat. Her mother came out in early July, bringing lunch and worry in equal measure. "Sarah thinks you should have talked to a consultant," she said, unpacking sandwiches at the tailgate of Meg's truck, "before buying the land. Talk to the soil, it told me enough." "Meg, Mom, I know everyone thinks I'm crazy, let them think it." Her mother's face softened. "Your father would have been proud even if it doesn't work. It's working." And it was in the areas where soil chemistry allowed. But Meg knew what everyone else knew: patchy success wasn't success. She needed yield. Needed proof measured in bushels per acre, in actual harvest numbers that could pay loans and property taxes and next year's seed. The drought started the third week of July. Not officially, the Weather Service wouldn't use that word for another month, but Meg felt it in the air, saw it in the subtle stress signals the plants threw off. No rain for 12 days, then 14, then 3 weeks. The wheat fields started showing it first. The heads didn't fill properly. The stalks took on that grayish tint that meant moisture stress. Dale's field, visible from Meg's kitchen window, went from promising to concerning in 10 days. Meg cut her irrigation schedule back, carefully managing the water she applied. Too much would mobilize the salt, kill the roots. Too little would stress the plants. She walked a line measured in quarter inches, in timing, in understanding how water moved through compromised soil. The barley held. By the first week of August, the regional wheat crop was in trouble. Meg heard it at the feed store, saw it in the faces of farmers who'd stopped talking about her experiment because they were too busy calculating their own losses. Connor Peterson found her at the co-op loading supplies. "My dad's looking at 40% loss," he said, "maybe more." "I'm sorry. Your field's still okay. It's holding." He studied her. "The barley, it's really salt tolerant, like significantly. It was bred for it. Thousands of years of selection in coastal areas, alkaline soils. It's not magic, Connor, it's just matching crop to conditions. We're all planted in wheat, same variety we've used for 20 years. I know, that used to work. Climate's changing, water tables changing. What worked 20 years ago might not work now." He drove off without responding. That night, Wade Holloway called her cell. "Meg, I'm man enough to admit when I was wrong about something." "Okay. I'm looking at total crop failure. Insurance'll cover some, but not enough. You taking harvest interns." She almost laughed. "You want to learn about barley. I want to not go broke 2 years running. This drought keeps up, wheat's not gonna cut it here anymore. Come by tomorrow. Bring something to take notes with." He showed up at dawn with a notebook and humility that looked uncomfortable on him. Meg walked him through the irrigation strategy, the soil management, the variety selection. Showed him the test results, the literature on salt tolerance, the careful calculations that had turned an 80-acre problem into a potential solution. "This is complex," Wade said. "It's different, not necessarily harder." "How'd you know it would work?" "Didn't know. Made an educated guess based on soil chemistry and crop history." "That's a hell of a gamble." She looked at her field, at the barley standing strong while conventional crops withered. "It's only a gamble if you don't do the homework." The extension agent came back mid-August, and this time he brought his supervisor, a woman named Dr. Patricia Vance who'd been working in soil science for 30 years. "Ms. Thorne," Dr. Vance said, walking the field with something like wonder on her face. "This is remarkable. Your soil tests showed salinity levels that should have prevented any grain crop establishment. Black barley handles it. I'm seeing that. But it's not just the variety choice. Your irrigation management, you've kept salt from mobilizing into the root zone even during heat stress. That's sophisticated work." Tim Bradshaw was taking photos, measuring plant heights. "We'd like to document this more thoroughly, maybe feature it in a regional case study." "Fine, but I've got harvest starting in a week." "You'll have to work around that." Dr. Vance smiled. "We'll manage." The first combine came through on August 23rd. Meg had rented it from 2 counties over. The local outfit had scheduling conflicts that mysteriously cleared up once word spread about her field quality. She ran the machine herself, watching the grain flow, clean and heavy. 63 bushels per acre on the southern section, 41 in the marginal areas. Weighted average of 57 bushels across the 80 acres. In a year when regional wheat averaged 23 bushels per acre, Meg's barley stood alone. The numbers went out through the Extension Service first dry agricultural data in a monthly report that normally nobody read outside of university researchers and policy analysts. But in a drought year, with crop failures across 3 states, someone at the Omaha World Herald picked up the story. Nebraska farmers' salt-tolerant barley thrives while conventional crops fail. The article appeared on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon, Meg had 17 missed calls and her email inbox had crashed twice. She was in the barn, cleaning the combine when Dale Peterson drove up with his son and Wade Holloway. They stood outside until she came out, wiping grease off her hands. "Meg," Dale said. "Got a minute?" She waited. "I lost 58% of my crop. Wade lost 70. We've got a group of us 9 farms who want to know if you consult. Help us transition some acreage to salt-tolerant crops. We'd pay your rate, whatever that is." "Don't have a rate." "Then we'll work one out. We need what you know." Connor stepped forward. "I read the whole article, called the Extension office, got the actual data. What you did, it wasn't luck." "No," Meg said. "It wasn't." Wade looked at the ground, then up. "I called you crazy at the coffee shop. I'm sorry. You were half right. It was a crazy risk, just happened to work. Will you help us?" She looked at them, 3 men who dismissed her, doubted her, waited for her failure like it was inevitable. But also 3 farmers who were genuinely struggling, who needed solutions more than they needed pride. "I'll help, but you need to understand this isn't quick. Soil remediation takes years. Crop transitions take planning. And you're going to have to let go of the idea that wheat is the only answer." "We're listening," Dale said. That weekend, Sarah drove out from Omaha with their mother. They stood in the field looking at the stubble where barley had stood. "Dad would have loved this," Sarah said quietly. "You proved the whole county wrong. Didn't do it to prove anyone wrong. But you did, and now they're all calling you." Meg's mother touched her arm. "How does it feel, being right?" She thought about it. About the long nights of irrigation calculations, the careful soil monitoring, the months of watching her field while others watched her with pity or amusement. About the loan payments she could make now, the property taxes covered, the seed money for next year's planting. "Feels like I can keep farming," Meg said. "That's enough." The consulting started in September. Meg worked with each farm individually, testing soil, reviewing water rights, planning crop rotations that could handle alkalinity and drought. Some fields were too far gone, salt levels beyond what even tolerant varieties could handle. But others, like hers had been, sat right on the edge of possibility. She taught them what her father had taught her: read the land first, then pick the crop. Don't force the ground to be something it's not. Work with what's there. Connor Peterson became her apprentice of sorts, showing up 3 mornings a week to learn soil chemistry and irrigation management. "Dad says I should go to ag school," he told her. "But I'm learning more here." "Go to school," Meg said, "then come back and use both." By October, 7 farms had committed to transitioning portions of their acreage to barley. Wade Holloway went further, converting 40% of his operation and sourcing 3 additional salt-tolerant varieties to trial. "I'm too old to change," he told Meg, "but also too broke not to." The university invited her to speak at their Sustainable Agriculture Conference in November. She almost said no, had the refusal half-formed, but her mother convinced her otherwise. "These are the people who'll teach the next generation," her mother said. "Give them what you've learned." The lecture hall held 200 farmers and students. Meg stood at the podium with her notes, and the same clothes she'd worn to plant the field work jacket, jeans, boots that had seen 8 seasons of mud. She talked about soil chemistry, about matching crops to conditions instead of forcing conditions to match preferred crops, about reading test results and trusting data and being willing to try what looked impossible on paper. "The field I bought was considered dead land," she said. But it wasn't dead. It was just waiting for the right crop and someone willing to listen. The questions lasted an hour. A young woman in the third row asked what Meg would tell farmers afraid to change. "Fear's reasonable," Meg said. "Farming's risky enough without adding uncertainty. But staying with what doesn't work, that's not caution. That's just slow failure. Sometimes the uncertain choice is actually the safer bet." Dr. Vance approached her afterward. "We'd like to establish a long-term study plot on your land, track soil recovery, crop performance over multiple seasons. There'd be some compensation." "How long-term?" 10 years minimum." Meg thought about it. About her 80 acres becoming a teaching field, a demonstration site, proof that damaged land could heal if you gave it time and the right treatment. "I'll do it, but I'm still farming it. Your study works around my schedule." Dr. Vance smiled. "I'd expect nothing less." The snow came in late November, early for the season, covering the stubble in white. Meg walked her field in the quiet morning, her breath fogging. The soil beneath the snow was already changing organic matter from the barley residue, salt leaching deeper with winter moisture, earthworms that had returned after years of absence. Her phone buzzed. A text from Connor. "Dad wants to know if you're free Thursday. 3 more farmers want to talk transition plans." She typed back, "Morning works." Inside, the house was warm. She made coffee, pulled out her father's old soil notebooks, 40 years of observations, written in the careful hand of someone who'd loved the land enough to study it. She added her own notes from this season. Barley yield by quadrant, salt readings over time, lessons learned. The county had laughed when she bought the field, thought she was naive or desperate or both. And maybe she had been a little. But she'd also been right, not because she was smarter, but because she'd done the work. Read the research. Match solution to problem instead of hoping the problem would disappear. Outside, across the fence line, Dale Peterson's fields lay fallow under snow. Come spring, 20 acres of them would be planted in the same black barley Meg had grown. Wade's farm, Connor's future, 7 other operations, all shifting, adapting, learning to farm the land they actually had instead of the land they wished for. Meg finished her coffee. Tomorrow she'd meet with the farmers, walk them through soil prep for spring planting. Next week the university study crew would install monitoring equipment. The work continued, season after season, building toward harvests not yet planted. But today, in the quiet morning with snow falling soft outside, Meg Thorne sat in her kitchen and allowed herself a moment of simple satisfaction. Her field had stood when others failed. The old knowledge had proven true. And the land salt damaged, written off, dismissed, had given back everything she'd asked for, and a little bit more. That was enough. That had always been enough.